Well, I'm in the shop here this morning, and we're starting to process this piece of wood that we're going to cut the stem out of. It was sawn by a friend of mine in the mill at a 5x5, and we're going to cut it to a 4x5, very simple straight rip. And I've set the bandsaw blade nice and 90 degrees to the table, so we'll get a really nice rip. And I'm actually going to set a little piece of aluminum angle iron, clamp it down to the table for a very simple fence. So I'm just going to put the rule up there like so. That shows 4 inches, yes. Slide this right up to it. Now it's not a very long fence whatsoever, and I don't have any infeed or outfeed cable on the bandsaw at all, but what I do have is a very good helper. So what we're going to do is both do it at once. You know, he's going to hold one end, and I'm going to be the sawyer, is what you would call the person at the blade there, and make sure that I think it's laying right up against that fence really nice and tightly. And that's all we have, is the length of that fence to go by. We don't want to have to run it through a planer afterwards or anything like that. There really isn't any need to do that. That cut isn't going to appear on the boat in any way at all. So that cut on the bandsaw has left us with this. This is a 4x5 at this point, and we're going to get the stem out of that. The first thing I'd like to do, though, is show you a model of the skiff that I'm going to build. This was made in cardboard. I'm not necessarily taking my dimensions off of this model. I had to have my dimensions before I built the model. And one thing I know about these skiffs is that 60 degrees at the entry makes a very nice skiff. So what I've done is I've taken a bevel set and I've set it at the stem like this, and I've checked it on a protractor and found out that it's still 60 degrees just the way I built it. And what we're going to do now is set the table saw and rip that dimension on the end of this piece of material. And I'm going to draw you a little line. It's going to be sawn in from the very corner of the stem right there, like that. Now that cut right there is the cut that accepts the planking. The planking will be enter into the stem right in here and be fastened into the stem like this. So then I'm going to make another incision, and it's going to just cut that piece out of the way. So that's the second set, and then I have to set the table saw even again to cut the material off and leave the cut water at the end. All right, we've set the table saw at 30 degrees and a fence alongside the blade there, and we've made our first cut from one end of the piece of material, and we've turned it around and made another cut from the other end of the piece of material. Now, those are obviously 30 degrees, and now what we're out to do is to cut this piece of material out of the way to make room for the hood ends of our planking. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll it on its side, and we've got Andrew on the other end again, and we don't have a long table or fence here or anything like that. It's very simple for us to make this cut. It's not that long of a piece of material. And we've left the table saw blade on exactly the same angle, but we have moved the fence over a little bit and changed the depth of the cut, and the idea is to get the two cuts to mate right up in this corner right here. Now, you wouldn't want it to cut in any deeper than what you want. Even if anything, you'd have it just a tiny bit short. If you had a little bit of material in that corner that you want to scrape out of the way, that would be fine. And basically what I'm going to do next is cut the rest of the material off the bow end of the stem here at the cut water. And I'm going to make those cuts 7/8 of an inch away from the first cut. Even though the planking is only 13/16 of an inch thick, I'm going to leave 7/8 of material out here, and the reason for that is to have a nice little reveal at the stem. I think it looks real nice on a skiff. I've never done it myself before on a skiff, but I do have a skiff in my yard that has been done that way, and I think it looks real nice, so I've decided to do it that way with ours. So we're doing our last two cuts on the stem here, one from each end again, and that is at the cut water. Now, what it's left us with here is a generated stem right off of the table saw. Now, we haven't had to use any hammers or chisels or rabbet planes or anything like that. We haven't really referenced any plans or done anything like that. It's really out of the knowledge of what we know about skiffs. We know we want the entry to be 60 degrees. That's what we've got. Now, this is the surface right here where the hood ends of the planking are going to be fastened down, and they're going to be butted into the rabbet right in here. And this is the cut water right here. Now, We've got it right down to almost a point here, and it's very possible that later on I'll actually adjust the width of this cutwater, make it a little bit wider than this, but I wouldn't want it to be too wide. I used to build skiffs and maybe I'd have that cutwater an inch wide or an inch and a quarter wide, but I've learned that going to weather, what happens is that surface bangs into the waves and a spray rises up in the air off of that surface and the boat gets wet. So the narrower the cutwater, the drier the boat, but I wouldn't want to have it quite this narrow. It would be vulnerable to being broken off or anything like that. I may plane it back till it's possibly a 3/8 of an inch wide or something along those lines. So we're going to move on to our next operation here, and it's going to be fitting the side planking together and also fitting the transom planking together.